Have you ever watched someone pull away from the very connection they seem to want most? The moment things become intimate, genuine, and emotionally real, they suddenly change. They become distant, cold, irritated, quiet, or they disappear altogether. And you're left wondering what happened. But with avoidant behavior, withdrawal does not always mean rejection or lack of interest. Sometimes it means the person is feeling far more than they know how to handle. Their mind wants connection, while their nervous system is warning them to escape. For someone who learned early that vulnerability can lead to pain, emotional closeness can feel dangerous. So when genuine feelings begin to develop, their instinct is often to create distance. The walls rise, their emotions become harder to access. They may run, not because nothing matters, but because something suddenly matters too much. That's why the stronger the emotional bond becomes, the stronger their retreat can sometimes appear. Someone who feels nothing may simply move on without much reaction, but someone internally conflicted may become unpredictable, warm one moment, distant the next, reaching out and then disappearing. Beneath all of that confusion can be a painful conflict between wanting connection and fearing what connection might cost them. And this is where people often make the biggest mistake. When an avoidant pulls away, you may feel the urge to chase, explain, reassure, or repair everything immediately. But constant pursuit can make them feel even more trapped. They may associate closeness with losing their freedom or control. Sometimes the healthiest response is to stop forcing the connection and allow space to exist. Your silence gives them an opportunity to experience their own emotions without someone else managing them. They may finally have to face what they were trying to outrun. That doesn't mean you should wait endlessly or become their therapist. You cannot heal another person's wounds for them. Real growth only happens when they decide to confront themselves. And something else often happens when you genuinely step back. They may begin appearing in subtle ways. They might watch your stories, interact with older posts, react to something indirectly, or suddenly find small reasons to enter your orbit. They may not say, "I miss you." Instead, they test the connection from a safe distance. Maybe they send a random meme, ask an unnecessary question, comment on something that doesn't really matter. These little gestures can be attempts to reconnect without having to face emotional vulnerability directly. But don't assume every digital breadcrumb means love. Sometimes people return because they're curious, lonely, seeking reassurance, or simply checking whether they still have access to you. The important thing is not the breadcrumb. It's what they do when real emotional accountability becomes necessary. If they truly want to rebuild something, eventually the indirect signals have to become direct communication. Watching you from a distance isn't the same as showing up for you. Your absence can reveal what your constant presence allowed them to avoid, but it should never become a manipulation tactic. You are not withholding yourself to make someone panic. You're stepping back because you deserve a relationship where connection doesn't depend on chasing. And then there's another pattern, controlling the pace. When an avoidant starts feeling overwhelmed, their replies may become slower, plans become uncertain, conversations lose warmth. Their energy suddenly drops. You may immediately wonder, did I do something wrong? Often, the real struggle is happening inside them. They cannot control the intensity of their feelings, so they attempt to control the relationship instead. They slow things down, create distance, delay responses, or keep conversations emotionally shallow, because regulating the connection feels easier than regulating their emotions. To them, intimacy can feel less like comfort and more like exposure. Being truly seen means surrendering some emotional defenses. For someone who has survived by depending heavily on independence, that vulnerability can trigger fear. So they ration closeness. They give a little, pull back, then return when the emotional pressure decreases. And if you respond by constantly adjusting yourself to their fear, the relationship can become unbalanced. You begin chasing their comfort while abandoning your own needs. That is where love can quietly turn into anxiety and power struggles. The healthier path is neither chasing nor punishing. It's clarity. Give them room to choose, but don't abandon your own boundaries while waiting for that choice. Because the real question isn't whether an avoidant misses you. The real question is whether they're willing to face what they feel and turn those feelings into consistent action. Some will run harder. Some will bury everything and convince themselves they never cared. But others will eventually realize that the connection wasn't the real danger. Their unresolved fear was. And when someone reaches that realization, the next step isn't another breadcrumb. It's honesty. It's communication. It's showing up even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. So if someone pulled away precisely when things became real, don't automatically assume you weren't enough. But don't automatically assume their withdrawal proves they're secretly in love either. Look at their actions. You don't need to chase someone into emotional awareness. You don't need to prove your value, decode every silence, or keep yourself available indefinitely. Real love eventually moves beyond fear. It becomes communication instead of confusion, consistency instead of hot and cold behavior, and vulnerability instead of endless escape. Sometimes stepping back doesn't make someone love you. Sometimes it simply reveals whether they're capable of meeting you where you are. And that truth, even when painful, is far more valuable than chasing someone who keeps running. An avoidant often needs the relationship to move slowly before they can genuinely feel secure. But their partner may interpret that slower pace as rejection and respond by pushing for more closeness. The more pressure they feel, the more they retreat. And suddenly both people are trapped in a cycle neither intended to create. Here's the important part. When an avoidant starts controlling the pace, it doesn't automatically mean their feelings aren't real. Sometimes it means their fear is stronger than their ability to process those feelings. Those delayed replies, slower plans, or moments of distance can function as emotional breathing room. They create a buffer between what they're feeling and what they're capable of handling. And strangely enough, deeper feelings can sometimes make that need for space stronger. They aren't necessarily trying to end the connection. They may be trying to stay connected without feeling like they're losing themselves inside it. That's why trying to force an avoidant to move faster usually backfires. You can't rush someone's emotional capacity. You can't demand vulnerability before their nervous system feels prepared to tolerate it. Healing doesn't happen because someone applies more pressure. It happens when a person gradually develops the capacity to remain present with emotions that once felt overwhelming. So what can you actually do? Respect their pace without abandoning your own standards. Keep your boundaries without turning them into punishment. Don't chase every withdrawal, but don't play disappearing games either. Stay calm, consistent, and rooted in who you are. That kind of stability can communicate something powerful. You don't have to control every part of this relationship to remain safe. When they begin to see that you're not trying to possess them, trap them, or force your way into their emotional world, something can slowly shift. Your consistency gives them an experience that contradicts the old belief that intimacy automatically means losing freedom.
And that is where change can begin. Instead of interpreting every change in their pace as proof that you failed, try understanding what may be happening underneath it. Sometimes the retreat is less about rejecting you and more about a nervous system that still doesn't know how to remain present when emotions become intense.
You don't have to force the relationship forward. Sometimes you simply stop reacting to every movement and allow them enough space to discover that the person they're trying to escape isn't you. It's the part of themselves that becomes vulnerable when they actually care. Another major misconception about avoidance is that they simply don't care. People see the emotional distance, the calm exterior, the lack of obvious affection, and assume there's nothing underneath it. But feelings aren't always expressed in obvious ways. Take jealousy, for example. An avoidant usually isn't going to bombard you with questions about who you're talking to. They may not openly demand to know where you've been or confront you about another person. That kind of direct jealousy requires admitting that they're emotionally invested, and admitting that can feel incredibly exposing. So instead, they may hide it. They act unaffected. They become quieter. Their mood shifts when you mention someone else. They may suddenly seem colder or less engaged. They observe instead of asking. If they're developing strong feelings, they may become unusually attentive to who has your attention. They notice details they pretend not to care about. They may become distant after hearing you talk about another person, even though they never explain why. None of these behaviors automatically prove romantic feelings, of course. Jealousy can come from insecurity, fear, or many other emotions. But when it appears alongside a broader pattern of attachment and withdrawal, it can reveal a conflict they're struggling to express directly. For an avoidant, direct vulnerability can feel like surrendering control. So instead of saying, "I'm afraid of losing you," the emotion may come out as sarcasm, silence, tension, irritation, or sudden distance. That's what makes their behavior so confusing. The outside says, "I don't care." The emotion underneath may be saying, "I care more than I'm comfortable admitting." Emotional distance isn't necessarily the opposite of love. True indifference is. Someone who genuinely feels nothing usually doesn't have much internal conflict to manage. But when an avoidant becomes noticeably reactive around the possibility of losing your attention, it can expose a crack in the emotional armor they've worked so hard to maintain. And this is where your response matters. Don't manipulate their jealousy. Don't intentionally make them insecure just to get a reaction. Don't create triangles or use another person as bait. Instead, stay grounded. You don't have to shrink yourself to manage emotions they haven't learned to communicate. You don't need to constantly reassure them or walk on eggshells around their triggers. You can recognize what may be happening without taking responsibility for fixing it. That grounded presence can be powerful because it shows them something different, someone who is emotionally available without being controlling and confident without playing games. Eventually, they may have to confront the truth behind their reactions. If they feel threatened by the possibility of losing you, perhaps they are not as detached as they have convinced themselves. But the real breakthrough doesn't come from jealousy. It comes when they learn to turn that emotion into honest communication. And then there's another moment that can be even more revealing. An avoidant begins to open up, not with some dramatic confession, not with a long emotional speech. Usually, it happens quietly. They might casually mention something painful from childhood. They may tell you about someone who betrayed them. They might make a joke about how difficult it is for them to trust people. Perhaps they reveal a small detail about a past experience and then quickly change the subject. To someone else, It may sound insignificant, but for an emotionally guarded person, that small disclosure can be enormous. Avoidants often don't reveal their deepest feelings all at once. They may offer small pieces of themselves and then watch carefully to see what happens. They are testing whether their vulnerability will be judged, dismissed, used against them, or respected. It's almost like they're speaking in emotional fragments. They give you one piece of the story, pause, and wait. If you respond with patience rather than pressure, they may eventually offer another piece. Because when someone has spent years protecting their inner world, vulnerability doesn't feel like casually opening a door. It can feel like walking into a battlefield without protection. And every time they choose to let you see a little more, they're taking a risk they may not even fully understand themselves. For an avoidant, opening up can feel terrifying. And yet, when genuine feelings begin to develop, there can be a part of them that desperately wants to be understood, even if they only allow that side of themselves to appear for a moment. So when an avoidant begins talking about their past, especially the painful or emotional parts of it, don't assume you're simply hearing old stories. You may be witnessing something they rarely allow another person to see. Those experiences often explain the emotional defenses you're seeing today. Their distance, their hesitation, their push and pull behavior, and their difficulty trusting closeness can all have roots in what they've experienced before. By sharing those parts of themselves, they're quietly testing something incredibly important: whether you are safe. Can you hear their story without judging them? Can you hold what they've told you without throwing it back at them later? Can you resist the urge to immediately diagnose, analyze, or repair everything? Because one of the deepest fears behind avoidant behavior isn't only the fear of intimacy. It's the fear that once they finally become vulnerable, the other person won't understand what they're seeing. Many have learned that opening up comes with consequences. So, when they reveal something personal, they're taking an emotional risk with someone who has spent years protecting their inner world. And they don't do this with everyone. An avoidant can spend years being charming, funny, intelligent, social, and easy to talk to, while keeping the most vulnerable parts of themselves completely inaccessible. They can allow people into their life without allowing them into their emotional core. So even a small disclosure can matter. Maybe they tell you something painful about childhood. Maybe they describe an old relationship but changed them. Maybe they admit they struggle to trust people. It might come out awkwardly or casually, but underneath that moment is a decision. I'm going to let this person see something I normally hide. And sometimes the vulnerability itself overwhelms them. They may tell you something deeply personal and then become distant afterward. They might reveal something important and suddenly need several days of space. That doesn't automatically mean they're playing with you. Sometimes they simply realize how exposed they have become and panic. Their mind starts asking, why did I tell them that? Did I say too much? Can I trust them with this? That's why your response matters. You don't have to become their therapist. You don't need to solve their childhood or dissect every wound they've carried. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can offer is calm presence. Listen. Don't judge. Don't make their vulnerability feel like a problem that needs immediate fixing. Let them experience something different. The possibility that being seen doesn't automatically lead to being rejected, controlled, or exploited. That's how a new emotional experience can slowly develop. Their wounds don't make them broken. Their imperfections don't make them unworthy. And their history doesn't have to become ammunition in the relationship. For an avoidant, That kind of safety can be incredibly meaningful. They may never immediately say, "I love you," but allowing you behind a wall they've protected for years can communicate something just as significant. "I trust you enough to let you see me." And trust can be one of the most meaningful forms of intimacy for someone who has spent much of their life avoiding emotional exposure. So don't overlook those small moments simply because they don't look dramatic. A quiet confession about their past may be far more vulnerable than any grand romantic gesture. It can mean they've begun to see you as someone worth taking an emotional risk with. And then there's silence. Most people underestimate what happens when you stop reaching out to someone who has become accustomed to your presence, especially when you step back without anger, revenge, or manipulation, and simply return your attention to your own life. For an avoidant, control often provides a sense of safety. They may try to control how close someone gets, how quickly intimacy develops, and how much emotion enters their world. As long as you're constantly initiating, they can remain in the position of responding. But when you stop chasing, that familiar dynamic changes. Suddenly, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know whether you'll reach out again. They can't rely on the same emotional pattern. And if genuine feelings exist, that absence may not feel as peaceful as they expected. They wanted space, but now they're actually experiencing it. At first, they may distract themselves, work harder, stay busy, scroll endlessly, spend time with other people, convince themselves everything is completely fine. But emotional avoidance doesn't erase emotion. Eventually, the unanswered questions can start appearing. Why hasn't she reached out? Did I push her too far? Has she moved on? Why does her absence bother me this much? You may never see that internal process. They may never tell you about it. But uncertainty can force someone to confront emotions that were easier to avoid when the connection was always available. Your absence becomes a mirror. It can reflect the longing they suppressed, the fear they ignored, the guilt they avoided, and the possibility that their own defenses may have cost them something meaningful. But don't misunderstand this. Silence isn't a magic trick that guarantees someone will come back. It isn't proof that an avoidant is secretly obsessed with you, and you shouldn't disappear simply to trigger a reaction. The real value of stepping back is that you stop carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship. You stop chasing clarity from someone who isn't ready to provide it. You stop trying to convince someone to recognize your value. And you allow their choices to become their responsibility. If they genuinely care and eventually develop the courage to confront their patterns, they may realize something painful. They weren't pushing away a problem. They were pushing away a possibility for intimacy, a possibility for growth, a possibility for a relationship they didn't know how to handle. For some people, that realization becomes the beginning of real change. Not overnight, and not necessarily with a perfect ending, but through honest self-reflection and different behavior. But remember the most important part. Their transformation is not your responsibility. You are not here to rescue them, teach them how to love, or wait indefinitely while they figure themselves out. Your job is to protect your own peace, maintain your standards, and remain honest about what you need. If your silence helps them recognize what they lost, that's their realization to carry. And if you're sitting in silence right now, wondering whether they feel anything, don't let that question consume your life. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You cannot build your future around assumptions about someone else's private thoughts. What you can know is this: your worth doesn't depend on whether they return. Your silence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. It's the moment you stop chasing someone else's emotional clarity and start choosing your own. Sometimes saying nothing is the strongest statement you can make. Not because silence guarantees that someone will come back, but because it reminds you that you don't have to abandon yourself just to keep someone else close.